Hey guys, it's Leila from Ignite and I'm here with Jonny.
Hello.
And in today's video, we'll be addressing how to best construct an essay for Module B, the critical or close study.
That's right. And make sure you check out our resources at ignitehsc.com.au after this clip if you enjoy it, or if you enjoy any of our other clips. We provide very comprehensive guides on Module B, on Module A, on all the modules. Standard, advanced, extension. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Please do check it out. And also, please do remember to subscribe to our channel if you are getting some value out of these. But let's get into it. The practical guide to a Module B essay.
Yeah, so what we know with Module B is you're expected to be going into great depth on the particular composer that you're studying. And part of that study will involve, of course, an analysis of form, the broader constructural elements of that particular composer. You'll take a look at context, both the literary and the material history of that time. And then you've got to take a step back and think about, okay, well, how does this actually fit within a broader essay construction? My advice to students, and Jonny, feel free to jump in at any point, is to go through your text in its entirety and pick out the salient, broad values that this particular composer is reflecting on and try and create some links to context on each of those values. So I guess in the Module B essay, what we're saying is that it is going to be value-based in each of the body paragraphs, but each of those themes or values, if you will, should be linked to a central aspect of context, and there should be at least one reference to form in each of those paragraphs. So how do you go about navigating this? Well, read your texts, go through, take note of the key ideas that are being conveyed, gather evidence for each of those ideas and order that thematically, and that really forms the basis of your body paragraphs. As you're going through and you're crafting those paragraphs, remember, go through the basics. Clear topic sentence, framing the key idea. You go through, I would say, 3 quotes per text per paragraph, and within that you're going to tie back to key contextual elements that are giving rise to the key idea that's being explored, key aspects of form, and if you are an advanced student, I would also recommend tying into critical interpretations that have either facilitated or challenged the perspectives that you bring forth on that text. So that's kind of the broader starting point. I guess, Jonny, maybe you could touch on the thesis statement development.
Yeah, I'll talk about the intro and I'll also talk about my tips for actually constructing the body paragraphs. So Leila's mentioned all the elements that you want to have in the essay. When it comes to actually putting the essay together, my advice would be to actually do the topic sentences first. Something I find that makes students have a much easier time to get through the essay if they can first of all map out the 3 key points, the 3 key values or thematic links, if you like, together. They first do those. So
do you recommend basing that off a question? So picking a question?
Yes, good point. So get a question that's broad enough and one that kind of resonates with how you've been taught the unit as well, because there's lots of questions out there for a lot of these texts in Module B, but best thing to do is ask your teacher for a practice question or a draft, or you can look at the sample NESA questions or last year's HSC questions, although if you're preparing for the HSC, you know that's not going to get asked again, but best way to go is probably to ask your teacher, what's a good draft question, make sure it's broad, and then first thing I would do is come up with 3 solid topic sentences that are clearly connected and that progress from one to the other, right? So it's very important to make sure that you are not just simply stating one point and then going backwards in your argument in the next paragraph, right? You need to be delicate and careful when you actually select what order you're going to present your ideas and then what order you're going to present your evidence. There needs to be a constant flow, right? Each topic sentence needs to build on the other. It needs to add something new, and it also needs to be connected. So
I guess a nice overarching way of organising that, irrespective of the particular text you're studying, is to ask yourself, does your composer raise a particular issue? And then does the composer raise a particular solution to that issue? So the first half of the essay should pick up what are the issues or the problems that are raised by the composer and what are the potential solutions to those. It doesn't necessarily have to be a political issue. It could be interpersonal. It could be within relationships, depending on the text you're studying. But that's a nice flow to work through. It wouldn't really make sense to start off the essay with what the composer wants you to take away from reading their work. What's the overarching message they want you to gain? Don't start with that. Leave that towards the end and show your marker through, I guess, the cumulative progression of your essay, how you arrive at that solution at the end of the composer's work.
Yeah, that's right. I'm finding that this particular kind of structure, which is very much like what we presented in one of our text and human experiences video, this idea of doing in the first body paragraph, and we do recommend 3 body paragraphs for a Module B essay, whether you're doing standard or advanced, 3 body paragraphs because it's just on the one text, no need for 4.
More depth rather than breadth.
That's right. So they'll have a little bit more evidence packed in them, but make sure you include form. But with each body paragraph, a nice focus I'm finding that really applies for almost any essay you ever do now is this idea of establishing a conflict or a tension in the opening body paragraph, then going into the struggle that results from that conflict, the struggle, what are some of the difficulties and challenges that the individual or character or voice represents, and then is there a potential resolution to it? What does the composer suggest is the resolution to it? So conflict, struggle, resolution has been a really solid structure that's working for students. It helps them understand and ensure that they have a progression in the essay, that they're moving their ideas forward. And will also force you, once you write about a conflict, a solution, once you write about a conflict, a struggle, and a resolution, you then have to look back at the text once you've identified what those things are and find the appropriate evidence that supports each of those points and make sure that each of those bits of evidence that are in support of those points are not saying the same thing. They have to add something new. They have to progress further as well within there.
Yeah, and I think also just keeping in mind, if you're struggling with really how to distinguish between conflict and struggle, a nice way of considering that, at least in the case of T.S. Eliot, the conflict might be an external aspect of Eliot's world, a conflict between the individual and the context in which they are placed. The second paragraph might look at the internalization of that particular struggle. How does it manifest within the individual? So I noticed a few students, even in human experience, kind of thought, well, what's the difference between conflict and struggle? Try and think either between individuals or between individual and context, and then how that might manifest within the individual in the second paragraph.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of students actually do struggle with that middle body paragraph if this structure is suggested. So another way of thinking about it is you could understand it as a conflict in the first body paragraph and then a conflict that results as a result of that conflict. So you could have two aspects of the conflict, for example. A
subsequent issue.
Subsequent. Just, it doesn't have to be chronological in the sense that it has to happen after the other thing. You could go sideways and say, here's one conflict, here's another conflict, here's a potential resolution. You can still do it that way. You can go laterally, but I like to think about it in my head as a progression. One thing happens, then another happens, then another happens.
Yeah, so I recognise that the structure we've just suggested there seems to, I guess, adhere to a single text study. If you're looking at a body of poetry, you can't really go laterally through the text in the sense that you're studying a number of poems, so there's no narrative or a central narrative you can follow there. But then what I suggest is one poem per paragraph, so developing 3 key ideas and a preferred poem that features in each of those paragraphs as an overarching structure. We do have a separate video that goes into this in detail, answering questions such as, what if I get a particular poem in the question, or what about comparative poetic paragraphs, and we address that in that video. But as an overarching stance, if you're listening to this now and you're following what Jonny's just mentioned, if you're looking at a body of works, isolate one particular poem or narrative per paragraph if it's a body of prose, and you can deal with it in that way.
Yes, and lastly, I think a really important thing to go over is once you do the topic sentences, once you get together your evidence, obviously you want to be polishing the introduction along the way. In the drafting process, I don't actually necessarily recommend doing the intro first, as I've kind of just outlined. I think it's actually very difficult to do that, but certainly you can have some ideas there and you can be chipping away through the process, or do it after the topic sentences if it's easier for you, or just do it once you've put the whole argument together. It makes a lot more sense to me.
It does. Yeah, and I think the reason for doing that is because the introduction has to have incredible foresight, right? The development of the thesis, the way you signpost your ideas, has to present an argument that can be justified through the progression of the essay. What you don't want is a situation where you present an argument or a framework in the intro that can't actually be justified by what you put forward in the rest of the essay. So that's the reason for doing this kind of reverse construction that Jonny has suggested.
Yes, and for your introduction, some of the elements that really need to be in every introduction are the following in no particular order. You need form, you need to mention a theme, but be careful not to list themes. You actually want to articulate it more as a phrase or a concept, and one that is overarching to the entire essay. You want to foreground your argument, what you're going to argue in each body paragraph, that is. You also need context. You need links to the question. Okay, you need to actually make sure you break down the question that is asked. So if you're doing a sample question, make sure you ask yourself the mini or micro questions, how, why, what type, in terms of the key words that are in that question, and answer those. And then you also need to try and integrate aspects of the rubric, any key terms. Module B, not so much, but generally speaking, having words from the rubric, like in textual conversations, resonances, dissonances, it helps to have those kind of sporadically throughout the essay. And then the last one is to mention something of the plot, right? If there is a plot or if it's poetry, something about the general narrative or a common narrative that seems to be there. Mentioning something like that just kind of grounds your intro in the actual text so we know what you're talking about. I think they are all very useful elements to include.
Yeah, okay, so if you're watching this video and you're thinking, okay, where do I go now with my Module B studies? Go through your text, select those key ideas, organise evidence across the board from the text that link to those overarching ideas, write your topic sentences, craft those paragraphs, be sure to include in those aspects of form at least one reference per paragraph. Think about context, which relates to each of the ideas that you're basing those paragraphs on. And I think that's a good starting point and will help you navigate through your Module B studies.
All right, awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
Check out our site at ignitehsc.com.au if you want more resources.
And we hope to see you in the next video.
See you then.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like the content, subscribe to our channel and we'll have more videos coming your way.
That's right, guys. Thanks for watching. And please make sure you check out our online resource database. We've had a team of state rank achievers and heads of English put these together for you, covering everything from essay structures and examples all the way through to craft of writing and comprehension skills. So check them out at ignitehsc.com.au and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.